Hello and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. I'm Wonder of Nature. Today I thought I would do a little beginners video, if you will. As you all know, I have about 20 years experience, give or take, with all things, pagan, witchy, spiritual, what have you. So I just thought that today I could go through and do a little tips for beginner witches, or tips for people who are just starting to get into this wonderful world of magic and mysticism and spiritualism and this great place, right? So I know that there is, for me, but just as like a forward or introduction, right? For me, when I was first starting out, I was very confused. I was overwhelmed. Didn't really know what I was reading. Didn't really know or even understand if the sources of the things that I was reading was actually legitimate. It was basically learn as I go, which is fine, but there were some things that I wish I had known, right? So let's just jump right in here. Number one. Oh, and I did ask my friends who I practice with, and they also included some, beginner tips for you, okay? Number one, do research. And I'm not just saying, I love Google. Google is amazing. I Google most things. But you have to do more than just Google and go to the first link that pops up, right? You have to look and research and make sure that the articles and the links and the sites that you are going to are legitimate and they're reputable sources, right? Because you don't want to intake information that could be incorrect and then you mistakenly spread incorrect information, right? So do research. Two, so when I was first starting out, the one thing that everyone always talked about or mentioned was you have to have a label, like what are you? What are you? What do you do? What are you? And saying just like, oh, I'm pagan, or oh, I'm Wiccan, or oh, I'm this, wasn't enough. You had to have like a specific, secondary, I guess, title. And that confused me a lot. I did not have, you don't have to have a label. I did not have a label. I didn't know what I was probably until my early 20s, mid 20s, right? So that's a good 15 years into my practice that I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what, I'm going to go towards. And granted, that could change. You never know, because spirituality and things like that is an ever, journey, right? You don't reach an end where you're just done. Or at least I don't think you should. I think you should always be learning. You should always be taking in information. You should always be wanting to expand your horizons and to gain knowledge, right? Number two, I'm going to say this, and it might, you don't have to be good at tarot. I get that when you first get into being witchy, being pagan, being spiritual, the number one type of divination that you see is tarot. And every witch has a tarot deck. And if you don't have a tarot deck, then what are you doing? And if you don't know tarot, what are you doing, right? I just happened to pick up tarot. I loved it. I wanted to continue to do it, and I have an affinity for it, right? But not everyone does, and it's okay if you don't. There are so many different kinds of divination out there that you can choose from. Some are so freaking cool that sometimes I kind of wish that I had a cooler form of divination besides tarot, which, side note, I'm gonna do another video on types of divination and the ones I've tried and the ones I want to try. But you don't have to be good at tarot. You don't even have to own a tarot deck if you don't want to. Like, it's not a requisite for being witchy, being pagan, being Wiccan, being spiritual. Like, you don't have to have one. So don't feel pressured into getting a tarot deck if you don't feel the call to get one, okay? Also, side note with tarot decks, you can buy your own. You don't have to be gifted a tarot deck, right? Okay, let's see. I wrote them all down because I did not want to forget them because, you know. So, when this one, you don't have to practice every day. Find what works for you. When I was first starting out, it was made very abundant, you know, that you need to be doing something every day. You need to be practicing every day. Excuse me. It's, you know, it's your spiritual practice. It's what you should be doing every day, every day, every day. And I always thought that, you know, I should be doing these elaborate, you know, spells and rituals every single day, you know, to continue my spiritual practice. And if people do that, you know what? You are amazing, because I cannot do that. I cannot do that every single day. I don't have the spoons for it. I do small things every day, like when I light a candle. That's part of my spiritual practice. Or I pull tarot cards every morning. That's part of my spiritual practice. But I don't do big, elaborate spells or rituals or anything of that nature every day. I just don't. I don't have the spoons for it. So if you don't, or you can't, or you just don't want to, that's completely fine. The great thing about being a witch and witchcraft and paganism, spiritualism, is it's completely catered to you. Whatever you feel comfortable with, you should do. The key term being comfortable with. Don't force yourself to do something that is out of your comfort zone just because you think that that's what you should be doing, because that's not going to benefit you in the long run, right? Okay. Also, this goes kind of hand in hand, but what works for someone else may not work for you, and that's completely fine. Like I said, paganism is a very personal, very, you know, whatever you want to do, you know, and that works for you and that you're comfortable with, that's what you should do. Don't look to other people and, number one, measure your, like, spiritual journey to theirs. Everyone is on a different path. Everyone's going to be on a different path. No two people are going to be on, you know, at the same point on their paths. That's just not how it works, right? As long as you know, are doing stuff consistently, and as long as you are, you know, following your instinct and your intuition and your heart into what you want to do, it'll be fine. Your path will change. God, is this... I mean, that is just like... I did not... Some of the things that when I first started out, or even like a few years in, that or even like a little bit in, that I said that I would never do, I'm doing now. Like, I said I would never work with deity. Even like 2021, I was like, I'll never work with deity. I just don't. It's just, you know, it's just like not something that I want to do. It's not something, you know, that calls to me. I'm never going to do it, you know. If other people do it, good for them, but it's just not for me, right? And now look, I work with the Morgan. She is a big influence in my life. She helped to get me through a really bad period in my life. I don't know what I would do if I hadn't been, you know, following her and like working with her through that time. But yeah, I do that. I also never thought that I would be on YouTube, you know, like sharing my love of everything witchcraft. back when I first started watching YouTube and stuff about the witchy and blah, blah, I was like, I could never, you know, like that's just not, like I could never. And now look, I've been doing it for like 3-4 years. I love it. I really enjoy it. I'm not the most consistent, but you know, that works for me, right? Like I said, whatever works for you, because I know me, and I know if I made like a list and I was like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, post or upload to YouTube twice a week, every week, this is this, I would not. And then I would feel like a failure, and then I would feel like I wasn't living up to my potential, and it's just a downward spiral, you know? So I do what works for me. Let's see. Pedal change. Okay. You don't have to look a certain way. Witches don't have a certain look. They don't have a certain aesthetic. They don't have a certain, you know, type of clothes they wear. They don't have a, you know, like, I am a witch and I wear jeans and t-shirts almost every day. I like floral pattern, right? I read a lot. I counted my books the other day, like a couple weeks ago. I have almost 700 books. 700. There's these, that, those two. Like, I have so many books. But, you know, and not every witch reads. Not every witch, you know, likes books in general. And that's okay, you know? There's not one cookie cutter aspect of a witch. If you say you're a witch, you're a witch. And that's just it. This one is a really good one that I like because this really, really helped me. Follow people on social media that enrich your practice. And when I say enrich your practice, and this was a tip from my friend Katie, when I say enrich your practice, I mean don't just follow people because either they have a lot of followers or they seem to be very popular or they look, talk, act like how you think, you know, that like someone like that should act. Don't do that. Broaden your search. Find people who you connect with, who you really resonate with what they're saying, connect with them, and then make sure that, you know, like, that they enrich your practice, that they can help inspire you to do more and be more with your practice. Don't follow people just for the sake of following. Don't emulate people just because they seem like the people, you know, that you should be emulating. So Katie would very much like this one. Not every witch is Wiccan. Yes. For beginner witches, people just getting into, you know, the like pagan spirituality, Wiccan is very readily available. It's very much what pops up first. It's very much, you know, this is what you see first, right? And that's okay. Katie has a very big problem with Wiccan and being called Wiccan and people assuming that she's Wiccan. There's nothing wrong with being Wiccan. Like I've said before, your path is your path. Whatever works for you, works for you. As long as you're not, you know, appropriating cultures, then, you know, being an asshole about things, like, do you, you know, like, there's so many things that you can do in your practice. So just, you know, research, broaden your horizons, look at things, you know, like, and if you want to be a Wiccan, you know, like, that's what I love and what drew me to paganism and spirituality is that it's so individualistic, you know, like, I can cater it to my specific needs, and I do. In regard to magical items, you don't have to have it all at once. Now, this was a big thing, and I actually ended up getting rid of a lot of the things that I got when I first started out You don't have to have a cauldron. You don't have to have an athame. You don't have to have a wand. You don't have to have a chalice for water. You know, you don't have to have these magical items that these books and these people tell you that you need. You don't have to have them. You don't. Number one, some of them are very expensive. If you don't need or want or have to spend your money on them, don't. Like, you don't have to have these things to have a full, enriching spiritual practice. You don't. If you feel the call to get them, that's great. But don't feel like you have to get them because someone told you that you're not going to be a witch unless you have them. I was told that. And it's bullshit. Make sure you're comfortable with what you are partaking in. Now, I say this because sometimes when you first start out, when you first dip your toe in, you get very excited. I did. You get very excited. You want to learn everything at once. You want to hang out with people who think, you know, who do the same things as you, and you want to just absorb everything you can all at once, as much as you can, and you just want to, you know, get in there and learn all of it. Sometimes that can be detrimental to you because you get involved with people or get involved in situations or practices that you probably shouldn't, and maybe you feel like there's no way that you can like back out, right? Once you're so far in. That's not the case. You have to be comfortable with the practice and the rituals and things that you are doing. You have to be okay with it, right? Don't get involved in situations and things that make you uncomfortable just because you got either caught up in a moment or, you know, you are hanging with certain people and they do these things and you think to, you know, continue to hang out with them that you need to do these things too, right? And that's not the case. Do whatever makes you happy and what makes you comfortable, okay? And last but not least, take it slow. There's no rush. You have the rest of your life, you know, to dive deep and figure things out and see where you're going to go with this. And it's a wonderful and beautiful journey. And you don't want to rush it. You don't want to just speed along and miss out on some really great things, because this is a beautiful, paganism and spiritualism in general is a beautiful, beautiful thing, and you are going to make connections and friends, and, you know, it'll just be so enriching and so beautiful. But don't, you know, take it slow. Don't rush into things. But yeah, that's all that I had written down. But just to sum it up, don't, like, when I first started, when I first got into it, I was also very, how can I say this? Excuse me. I was very, like, I was very scared. Number one, even though I had, because I've said before, you know, like, I'm a hereditary witch, but it's like Appalachia granny magic witch, which is very much based in God and the Bible. Even though I grew up with it, like, getting into it is very scary. It can be very overwhelming. That's why take it slow is so important, because if you get overwhelmed, it's okay to take a second, take a step back, reevaluate, you know, make sure that everything is, you know, okay, everything is okay with you, with everyone there. Just be comfortable with things, right? And yeah. Tips for beginner witches. If you all think of any tips that beginner witches should know or you would like them to know, you can leave them in the comments below. I may do another video for tips for beginner witches, or just, you know, tips in general. But yeah, let me know in the comments below. I would love to know your tips. I would love to know what you came across or how you felt when you first started paganism and this wacky, wonderful journey that we're all on. But yeah, thank you for stopping by. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you get everything you want, and blessings and growth, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.